Even though we have learned that Marie Curie, a physicist and chemist who conducted pioneering research on radioactive decay, was the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Physics and became the first person to receive a second Nobel Prize in chemistry. The presence of female scientists spanned the earliest times of the history of science, wherein they have made significant contributions. The involvement of women in the field of medicine has been recorded in several early civilizations. An ancient Egyptian physician, Merit-Ptah, who lived circa 2700 BC and described in an inscription as chief physician, is the earliest known female scientist named in history of science. Agamede was cited by Homer as a healer in ancient Greece before the Trojan War, and Agnodice was the first female physician to practice legally in the 4th century BC. Gender roles were largely deterministic in the 18th century, and women made substantial advances in science. Then, during the 19th century, women were excluded from most formal scientific education, but they began to be admitted into learned society during this period. 40 women have been awarded the Nobel Prize between 1901 and 2010. 17 women have been awarded the Nobel Prize in physics, chemistry, or medicine. I am your host, Marie van Driel, and you are listening to The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. And this week I'm speaking with GIA alumni and co-founder and the founder of Women in Science Without Borders, Professor Dr. Amal Amin, about the important role of girls and women in science. Professor Dr. Amal Amin, welcome to the show of The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. As I just shared, you are GIA alumni and co-founder and founder of WISWB. Where does the term WISWB standing for?
Hello. Thanks a lot for hosting me in this show. WISWB stands for Women in Science Without Borders Initiative, and GYA also Global Young Academy.
Women in Science Without Borders. Is that a global organization? And what is the organization mainly engaged in?
It's long story. Women in Science Without Borders has long story. We are now global organization. Okay, we are distributing over 60 countries and increasing. But I founded the Women in Science Without Borders for males and females, so that the aims are different. I founded Women in Science Without Borders as new initiative with the slogan Science for Sustainable Development to empower women in science, whether seniors or young. Why borders? Because across borders, cultures, and Women in Science Without Borders depend on inclusion, cooperation with males colleagues. We are not only women, we are cooperating with men. It's for men and women. And the only merit the scientific excellence and the activities and the service to the society and so on. And we have impact on the society. We have to have impact on the society, and our aims around the sustainable development goals, specifically gender equality, so that Women in Science Without Borders is a gender inclusive initiative. provides mentorship and highlights the success stories of the individuals for the successful cooperation from different disciplines, cultures, and regions. Also, Women in Science Without Borders increases the role of science in developing the societies. It's our main aim to develop society with science and to gather all partners in the society, industry, NGOs, civil society, private sectors, scientists, whether young or seniors, all partners together to speak with science for the sake of the society, so that our main aim is to work for the society, whether nationally or internationally, so that it's a global aim to make science available for all, to make science for happiness. We are working for the society, for the happiness, and we want to increase the public awareness with science, so that the initiative is not only a conferences or meetings or something like that. It's a complete initiative to build societies with science. The initiative began in 2017 by holding annual global meeting called the World Forum for Women in Science. It was held twice in Egypt. I invited you once in Egypt, but
Yes,
you had
yes,
bad circumstances that you couldn't join us, and
yes, yes.
once in South Africa and once in Brazil. From the beginning, we had the support from industry like Sanofi, Johnson and Johnson, Wellcome Trust, and big firms like Elsevier, also big organizations like International Science Council, Brazilian Academy of Sciences, Egyptian Academy of Sciences, also Arab Science and Technology Foundation, L'Oreal. Also, we had support from African Academy of Sciences. We had support from all partners, really. The World Forum for Women in Science, as I told you, that it's for all partners, for all stakeholders, so that it's multidisciplinary. For medicine, agriculture, engineering, all fields, even social sciences, so that it's open for all fields, accompanied by capacity building programs for young generations, for young scientists, and so on. And also, we had always activities for the youth, including competitions around the sustainable development goals like water, food, energy, and so on, health. We gathered experts from all fields. Again, our activities are gender inclusive in productive and innovative way based on science. Now we have monthly meeting called Saturday Science Webinars, like the programs and the movies and so on. And we will have in December Inspire Me. It's another show for the success stories for several scientists around the world to inspire new generations and others to have science as their fields or as mentoring for the young generations. Also, in all our events, we host the top experts and the young generation, so that I think it's a good environment to exchange experiences. And from all countries, we have no restrictions against cultures and so on, so that it's a good environment and healthy environment to exchange experiences for the sake of humanity themselves. Next year, we will organize Youth Science Forum for the young people from 17 years old, and we will have a special World Forum for Women in Science for Refugees. It will be held in Iraq, in Kurdistan, to help in building and reconstruction of the society by science. Because normally all organizations used to give them money, food, and so on. But what about to help in reconstruction and help in returning back the scientists, or inverse the brain drain to bring in, or something like that? So much things, but briefly.
That is absolutely a mouthful. That is almost a biography instead of an answer. Amal, you are living in Egypt, Cairo, right? and you say you are crossing borders with the organization Women in Science Without Borders. Do you see a difference between Egyptian young scientists or young people and the young scientists or young people in other countries? Because you have traveled to other countries, I have understood.
No, I think the difference not in the mentality of the people, you understand, because we are the same. All human are the same. But I think the difference only in the capacity of the labs, the funds, and so on. Because now in Egypt, almost 70% or 60% of all the graduated students go outside Egypt and getting PhD from outside and so on. So that no difference in the mentality. Education, it's the same. But the problem lays in the capacity when they return back. So that some people prefer not to return back. And it's the problem, the brain drain, and it's everywhere in the developing countries. So that no difference in mentality, no difference in people, but the difference only in the funding and the environment of the research and the capacity also of the labs. And we need the modernization of the scientific research here, not in the mentality or education or the way of the research, but in the environment itself, to be suitable for the people to cope with the new challenges worldwide.
Now, you are a female scientist, but once you were, like me, a young girl, having dreams, growing up, playing in the backyard, or whatever your daily activities were when you were a youngster. What made you decide to become a scientist? Because we in the Western world, most of us think that countries like Egypt, uh, women are not really allowed to explore their own minds and to go into universities. But you prove that is not fact, because you are and I'm when I'm correct, associate professor for nanotechnology polymers at the National Research Center in Egypt, Cairo. What made you or what influenced you to become a scientist?
You wouldn't believe that it was a dream, really. It was a dream to
A
be a scientist.
dream.
Yes,
Okay.
and here it's a wrong or a mistake. That here we had no rights or something like that as women. But if you come here in Egypt, you will find about 50 or 60% of the students at universities from women, females. I don't know why, maybe because of the economic problems and so on, so that maybe girls prefer to study to the highest degrees like PhD, even to PhD. The women here represent the highest percentage of the higher education till the level of PhD. So that it's normal here in Egypt to have dreams, to have a level of education and so on. But for me, it was a dream to be a scientist. When I was younger, I read at the library of my father. There were several books about scientists, about history, and about politics, even politics, so that I read a lot about everything. But with respect to my mentality or my nature, I don't like to have conflicts. I like to be in peace always, so that I think as a girl that the only thing to change the world in peace is with science, because I will not be a politician. I don't like politics because lots of conflicts and no result. Sometimes no result. So that I convince myself that the science is a good template to change the world peacefully and effectively as well. Even with my role model, I choose Marie Curie as my role model because I found her came from a poor background and she struggled a lot and transferred to another country and she began to study another field, very difficult field, and she was excellent in this field. She got Nobel Prize twice, and she
Well,
became one of the greatest scientists, not only as female scientist, but as great scientist.
yeah,
So that it's complicated. It was my dream. So that I worked very hard to be as I wanted. I traveled a lot. I worked inside lab and outside lab, and even I worked for the society. So I gathered the complicated equation that working for myself and working for the society. So that it was dream.
that is well, a lot of support and a lot of studying as a young girl in Egypt. I just briefly mentioned your study, your field of expertise, but what is your scientific specialization exactly, and what does it speak of?
My fine field is polymer chemistry or polymer technology. I went to Germany in 1999 to get my PhD in inorganic chemistry, so that I got a PhD in catalysis, and I mixed it between catalysis and polymer chemistry to have new materials, so that I consider myself as material scientist. I prepared new materials for several applications, industrial applications, for biomedical applications, and so on. And for myself, I consider myself a big fan for one material for several applications, so that
Okay.
I am playing with materials. It's my field and it's my love.
That is clearly to hear. But for people who are less scientific minded, what are these polymer technologies or nanotechnology or polymer materials? What is it exactly?
The polymers everywhere, in toys,
What do
in
you use it for?
packaging, in packaging, it's plastics. Plastics is one category of the polymers. The polymers is the big family. So that polymers, plastics everywhere, in your home, it's everywhere, in chairs, in computer, even in computers, in packaging, and everywhere.
So what is the one thing that we can see that we probably maybe use in our homes that has been, well, where you have been working on?
The plastics, I told you that the packaging, the nylon
So
plastics. Yeah, yeah.
the, the, the plastics in my laptop are probably
Yes.
you have been working on that material.
It's misunderstanding that the plastics only for bottles and so on, but the plastics now used everywhere because there are several categories from polymers or plastics. We have conductive polymers in all electronics now. And if we will have another conversation, I can explain to you in details the electronics which were made from plastics or conductive polymers.
Well,
So that is
I'm happy to accept your invitation to have another conversation with you, and where you can explain me all about these polymers.
I
Because
need
wow,
that.
I have a little piece of Professor Dr. Amal Amin in my home, all the way from Egypt. So that is absolutely totally cool.
But I need board or my slides just
No, I
to
will not be bored.
explain in details what plastics. You know that the polymers uh, are considered as the oldest material on the earth after the stones and metals, because
Yeah.
it's inside us, RNA and DNA. It's the nucleic acids inside us.
So that is a creepy thing. There is plastic in me. Or am
Not
I?
plastics. Plastics is the industrial expression about the new category of polymers. But polymers themselves are considered as the oldest category of materials after stones and metals, because they are everywhere in the cellulose, in the plants, all over the earth, and inside our body in DNA and RNA, they are polymers. Polymers means higher molecular level compounds or materials.
Okay, it sounds very complex, I must say.
Yeah.
You say you have studied in Germany. I am living in Germany. Where have you studied in Germany?
In Baden-Württemberg, in Ulm.
What? Again? Where?
Ulm, yes, at University of Ulm in organic chemistry department.
Ah, okay. Yes. I didn't understood it in the first time. Um, when you were you came from Egypt to Germany to study these polymers and nanotechnology. Wasn't it a little bit funny or strange coming from Egypt to Germany? And there's a complete different language, a complete different culture, and probably maybe students from Germany weren't used to students from Egypt. How did you experience that time that you were studying here in Germany?
It was hard time, really, by the way, because I accompanied my family and my daughter was toddler and my husband left his job to be a family and to be together in Germany and so on. But when I started studying at Ulm University, I found myself in different culture because it was my first time outside Egypt, and I wouldn't like to remember really because it was very hard time. You understand because different cultures, two different cultures, me and my colleagues, and I was the only married one in the group, and they were younger than me and so on, and I had several commitments, family and lab work and so on, and I had to return back at 5 o'clock and maybe return back again to the lab. I worked during weekends and so on. It was very hard, really. So that the German system is good, and I learned a lot. But to understand, it's very hard to have the work-life balance. You have to work very hard, very hard, and to be focused and so on. But it was advantage for me because I learned a lot. I wouldn't learn that much if I wouldn't go my first time to Germany to any place except Germany, because Germany is more ordered than others, or the system is harder. I don't know, but I learned a lot. Really, I learned
Okay.
how to be focused, how to be very serious, and how to manage in your time, how to make time management in a very good way, um, how to be very strong. They transferred me from normal woman. You understand? This experience transferred me from normal woman to real scientist. I think
Okay.
that's my life experience.
That it is indeed a real life experience from being transformed into a young student to a real full-time scientist. But female scientists, they have always been, well, sort of in the background for a very, very long time. Why do you think that it is that female scientists are, well, have been pushed a bit back into the background?
I think the situation now is much better than before because all organizations and all communities want to enhance this situation of women in science. But we still need some work on this case, women in science. We need to reach to the time that no women in science, no men in science. We are all scientists. And I think the problem lays in many different ways. As I told you before, with respect to myself, that I had no mentoring. It was my first experience in Germany, so that I had no previous experience. So that maybe because of work-life balance in some girls, they need to make a family, or they need to make some personal life and so on. And at the same time, they have to work very hard at labs. So that it's one of the reasons. Lack of networks. There are no successful networks. At my time, there was no successful network for the young girls or the young scientists or so on, or so on. But now I think it's much better because there are several global organizations concerning in young scientists like Global Young Academy, others, and so on. Also, sometimes I feel that it's a matter of acceptance of the societies, the communities, the scientific communities themselves for women in science. Because I heard that one scientist, I think, in big conference told that physics is a man field. You remember?
Oh,
Or
that is
something that,
absolutely not true. No.
or another one Nobel holder said that I don't like, he said what's the same meaning as I don't like women in my lab because
Oh,
they are always crying and so on. So that it's matter always of acceptance of the presence of women inside labs and cooperation. Sometimes the scientists, the male scientists, wouldn't like to cooperate with female scientists because they think that they are burdens or they are extra load on the work. They will not work efficiently or something like that. So that it's one of the reasons. Also, sometimes it's the defect from media, from culture, from educational system, or so on. All these communities encourage the image for women that they are soft, they are not prepared for the hard work, and so on. So that what and no much success stories in different fields, especially in science, so that the girls will not follow. The girls will be desperate at the first problem. As I told you that I learned in Germany with the difficult times that I can uh, continue. So that I had the experience to continue. But what about the others? They made they made them feel always desperate. They are not qualified enough to be a scientist, especially that the way itself is very long. The science way is very long to be a scientist and good scientist and
yes.
to have impact and so on. So that there are lots of reasons. But now I think the situation is enhancing more than before. But we need more work because how to ignore 50% of the population? The women represent 50% of the population. It's
Yes.
not a matter of women or men. It's a matter of diversity. You understand? It's very good to have diverse points of view for everything. It will enrich the culture. It will enrich the research. Everything. I read in the UN report, UN Women report, that it's not only because of women or men. It's about enrichment of the points of view, enrichment of the decisions.
Mhm. Well, it is a little bit strange that there are still scientists out there or people in general out there who think that women shouldn't be in science. Well, regardless the reason why they think that women shouldn't do that. But because when we look at history, well, we all know Marie Curie, for instance, and there are so many scientists, female scientists in history. Even the wife of Einstein was, I believe, a biologist, but I'm not quite sure about that. But she was a scientist as well. So it
Yeah.
is very strange that there are still people thinking that females, that women shouldn't be in science. This idea, this feeling, this experience that you had in Germany and your hard time in studying here in Germany and looking at how people think about women in science, this is the reason why you stood up and together with other scientists built this enormous organization all over the world that is called Women in Science Without Borders.
Yes, because of several reasons, as I told you. I had hard times everywhere I went because I always accompanied my children and I had always the work-life balance equation that I always wanted to accompany my family and I always wanted to be good scientist. So that I always had challenges. So that I was working always to make science available for others as well, because to encourage others to transfer what I experienced, that the science is not hard at all, always, but sometimes it's a matter of stages. In the beginning, it's hard, and afterwards you will get some fruits, and the fruits of science is very good. Because if you feel that you make a change or you change the environment around you or you impact anything or you influence others or you become a role model for others and so on, so that they are the fruits and you become very happy. That's why I decided to make several organizations and to co-found others. By the way, Women in Science Without Borders wasn't my first one. I co-founded, as you told me, Global Young Academy, Egyptian
Yes.
Young Academy, and also I began in my early career to found with others also the Egyptian Society for Nanotechnology, Advanced Materials and Nanotechnology, and the Arab Network for Nanotechnology, and so on. Because I convinced, as I told you, that I wanted to change the world with science, I wanted to change the society with science, and I found science is the only way to change peacefully. And also, I wanted to transfer my experience, how to change peacefully, and also how to transfer this experience to become to make things more easy. That don't worry for the young generations, don't worry, you will find at the end of the tunnel some lights. You understand me?
Yes, yes, I understand. Children are indeed the future generation for, well, for all kinds of jobs and studies, etc. And also children from all over the world. Which country do you think is in the most need of, or in a more need for the support of women in science without borders?
I couldn't determine because you know that in Egypt, as example, the situation of women is very good. We have very good laws, and now the women in science about 46%. So that the people usually think that I am defending about our problem. No, we have here no real problem, really.
Mhm.
Maybe the problem lays in work-life balance and the work environment, and it's normal for males and females here. But I founded Women in Science Without Borders as a big template for all countries, for the globe, that we have to cooperate with each other. And after pandemic, it was very obvious that we have to cooperate really with each other. So that I couldn't determine which country, because after pandemic, we all need each other. We all need the cooperation. We all need to collaborate with each other. So that I couldn't determine, because we have to differentiate between after pandemic and before pandemic. Maybe before pandemic we were classified as developed and developing. After pandemic we have to be one world. We have to cooperate, all of us, because the problem usually comes from one side, but it will affect all the world, right? So that
Right, yeah. The coronavirus is, well, a virus we have to, well, we have to stand tall together, yes, to, well, reduce its aggressive activities, if I may say so. And I think that when I'm listening to you and your children are studying medicine, I think that is a very, very good hope that this coronavirus will be killed by our next generation doctors and medical doctors, etc. What do you think, Amal, that we could do, we adults could do for our younger generation to get more access to all kind of scientists from all kind of worlds, etc.?
For the next generations, we have to advise them to be focused. And before beginning, they have to determine the way. Because usually they choose the way according to listening to some extra advices that they will find a job if they will be accountant. They will find a job if they will work in advertisement and so on. No, they have to be free. They have to leave their mind to be free, and they have to think very deeply about what they want really, because they have to work very hard. And if they want to be a scientist, they have to study very hard at the first stage of college, and then see what's the preferences. If they prefer to study in chemistry, organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, and so on, so that they have to read about. They have to be in contact with other scientists in these defined fields. And then, after determination of the right field and so on, they have to apply for scholarships and so on outside. Always they have to think outside box. They have to go outside comfort zone. The problem in all the young generation now, which I find always this problem. They want to think safely. You have to
Yes.
think outside the comfort zone. You have to be adventurous. You have to dream big. You have to think outside the box. You have to be creative. You have always to think every day with to-do list, achievements. You have to make size your achievements. You have to work hard. You have to develop yourself. You have to gain new experiences. Very, very hard to be a scientist now. So that you have to be adventurous at first, and you have to define your dreams second, and then work hard and do everything. It must be done to be a good scientist, because if you become a scientist, you have to be change maker, and if you be a change maker, so that you have influence others. So
That is fantastic advice for our next generation scientists and for young people in general. Dare to dream big, be adventurous, and think outside the box, but feel yourself free to choose any field of study within science. Amal, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you all the way from Egypt. Every now and then the connection was a little bit bad, I heard. But hey, from Germany to Egypt, that is a very big distance to overcome, even in electronics. But I see that the hour is almost over. But before we close out, can you tell us where we can find more information about your research, your articles, the organization of Women in Science Without Borders, and how for people to contact you if they have questions for you?
my research information on the website of National Research Center, my workplace, and the information about Women in Science Without Borders. We are on the social media, so that just come to the social media, like our page and our YouTube channel, and just send us a message. We will be with you. And all our events and conferences are free and available for all.
Thank you all for tuning in this week on The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. Make sure to visit our website, www.nexttruth.com. That is nexttruth, all in one word.com. And let us know what you think about our podcast. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on our website in the section The Next Truth Podcasts. Or if you would simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us too. I am Maria Anna van Driel with The Next Truth. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.